this week we're talking about connection. We're talking about connection. We alluded that last week that community was not about spectating, but rather participating. And connection is where that happens. It's about being connected within the body of Christ. As you know, I'm taking several trips to Israel, and one of the things that we always tell them is we're returning back home, is we say, now when you go home, we don't want you to be discouraged because you are going to try and explain your experiences here, and you won't be able to adequately do it. You can't fully explain it. People are not going to get what happened, not because they don't want to, not even necessarily because you're a bad explainer, but rather because they weren't there. It's the line we always say when someone's telling a story and they think it's really funny, and we don't, and we say, well, I guess you have to be there. There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. There's a sense of camaraderie. There's a sense of a shared experience that happens when you go and do something as a group, a kind of mini community. And I can remember on some of those trips, experiences, talking with people who've been before, and it's almost like there's a special password or secret handshake as we talk about this experience that not everyone has shared. Because you have to kind of be there. If I explain it to you, it just doesn't do it justice. As I showed people pictures of standing on a rooftop in Jerusalem overlooking the Mount of Olives and the Kidron Valley and all this sort of stuff, the picture just doesn't get it done as to when you're standing there and you're in the picture. And that's a little bit about what we're talking about today, is connection. About connecting with God and connecting with the people that are sitting next to you as we all move forward. And during Relay for Life, I'm always reminded as people show up at various times throughout the night and they connect with somebody and they walk the track together. And then groups, and then they connect with other groups, that they're all walking together for the same purpose with different groups and shifting along the way, holding hands with a friend or sharing a conversation with a group of people, all moving together, but you're connected. And if you tell somebody about the Relay for Life, but they weren't there and they weren't a part of those conversations, it's not that it's not good, it just doesn't quite get it there. I'm going to tell a story, and Mike will know this story because he was there. But on Friday, I was so excited because on hole number 7, I chipped in for a birdie. Now, here's the funny part. None of you saw it, and even the 3 other people that we were playing with, they didn't see it. So I had to step back and say, they heard me freak out on the course, and probably people called EMS. They thought I was having a seizure. And I had to leave the ball in the hole so that they knew. They said, what just happened? What just happened? And I said, I got a birdie. It was awesome. Oh, it's the greatest day ever and all that. And I remember Mike going, well, isn't that nice? Because we were competing. So, but it's a shared experience. We're all connecting together. And see, you get a sense of it when I tell you, but you can't really fully be with me unless you're connected. Does that make sense? Army trips. If you've ever been on a Army trip, you know that things never quite go as planned. You get there and you have to adjust. In fact, Army mission trips in general are the greatest teaching tools for flexibility on the planet. Because you make the plan, you show up there, somebody got sick, somebody couldn't make it, you have to shift your roles, you have to be infinitely flexible and be able to bend and not break to be able to do that. And they build into youth ministries an incredible camaraderie as they have shared this time together, as they were tired and hot, as they worked, as they did all this stuff.
they had worship services, as they came home, they're connected in. In fact, one of my secrets was if I could get just a student who was maybe on the fringes, didn't attend a whole lot, if I could just get them on a UMRV, I knew I got them. Because they would connect in and become a part. And then they wanted, because they knew all these people that they had shared experience with. That's what connection is. Connection is about being a part of what's going on, not watching or hearing or getting information about it. It's why the scriptures are so powerful, because in it they tell the story of who God is. I'm always amused when people who are not believers, people who are outside of the church, begin to tell the church who our God is. They don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. They say phrases like, well, that's not very Christian. Well, how would you know what Christian is? How would you know? Maybe it's really Christian. Maybe when, I cut you off in traffic because you did that to me, maybe that's really Christian. You don't know. But that sense of connect, the story is what tells it. Think about it. If I were to describe somebody to you, well, tell me about so-and-so. Well, she's got long brown hair, blue eyes. She's like in her late 20s. She comes to this service, and her and her husband have 2 kids. You have no idea who she is. But if I tell you a story about her, then you start to get a little idea. And then if you go with her somewhere, her and her husband or family, and you're at an event and you have a great time, suddenly you know who she is. And if you have multiple shared experiences, you get a rounded idea of who they are. But that can only happen if you connect. If you connect with them. It's the same thing with God. We can know all about God. We can have an understanding of who God is. But until we connect with God, specifically in the local church, you cannot fully know who God is. And you just can't. If you never crack open the Bible and see how God has interacted with humanity, I would submit to you that your knowledge of God is infinitesimal. It's incredibly small. It's tiny. Because the nature and character of who God is contained within the Scriptures. And it is demonstrated in the life of the local church. So that we get an idea of who God was, who God is, and who God will be. All as we participate together. Our passage today is out of 1 Peter chapter 1, beginning in verse 13. On my Bible, it's on page 1927. So good luck. 1 Peter 1:13. Peter says this, therefore, and let's just stop right there, because whenever you see therefore, there's a specific idea in mind that the writer is saying. In other words, he has this idea in his mind, and he's writing it in terms of what he's thinking about. So you have to back up, and you have to figure out what the therefore is really there for, and what it means. And if you go back to verse 10, you get an idea of it. Peter says this, concerning this salvation. Concerning this salvation, this thing that we're a part of, that we've joined into together. The prophets who spoke of the grace that was to come to you searched intently and with the greatest care, trying to find out the time and circumstances to which the Spirit of Christ in them was pointing when he predicted the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow. In other words, in Isaiah and in Jeremiah and in the prophets of Joel and all of those things that they talked about, that they didn't realize that they were talking about not only that present time, but also a time to come. that they were sharing about how the Messiah would suffer. They were talking about what the Messiah would be and what his ministry would be long before Jesus came upon the earth. All of those things, those prophets wanted to see it. They knew God was at work. They knew God was moving. They longed to see it. And Peter says, and now you have. The thing they wanted so badly has been placed in your lap. It was revealed to them that they were not serving themselves, but you. When they spoke of the things that have now been told you by those who have preached the gospel to you, by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, even angels long to look into these things. Therefore, prepare your minds for action. Be self-controlled. Set your hope fully on the grace to be given you when Jesus Christ is revealed. Not the fact that we're going to be with him, but hope that no matter what we're going through here, that it will all work out as God has intended in the end. In other words, no matter how bad it gets here, we know that one day God will make all things right. And he says, as obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do, for it is written, be holy because I am holy. Since you call on a Father who judges each man's work impartially, live your lives as strangers here in reverent fear, for you know that it was not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your forefathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Through him you believe in God who raised him from the dead and glorified him, and so your faith and hope are in God. Now that you have been purified, now that you have been purified yourselves by obeying the truth, so that you have sincere love for your brothers, love one another deeply from the heart. For you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and enduring Word of God. So what Peter is talking about is the salvation that we carry, and in light of that, how then we should live. And so he says, you need to be ready for action. The literal picture of this verb, action, or ready, being ready or prepared, is in the Middle East they would wear long flowing robes. And so that makes it difficult to move quickly. So they would gather up their robes enough so that they could move without being hindered. It's an idea of preparing for war, of having the right mindset. And so what Peter is saying here is, be ready when God calls. Be ready. Be listening intently. It's the idea of when we have friends coming over that we love for dinner, and we're listening for the doorbell. We're watching out the window for the headlights. We're ready and prepared for when they come. Not sitting unprepared completely, the house not arranged, the meal not prepared, watching TV. And they show up and we're like, oh yeah, that was tonight. Pizza, everyone? Will that work? But being prepared and ready so when they open up the door, that was the problem of Martha. She had not prepared for the Lord to come. And so she had to busily run around and make preparations that should have been done before he ever arrived, so that she could take the posture of her sister Mary. It's not that Martha was terrible or bad or somehow didn't perceive God. It's that she did not prepare herself for action. And so she had to kind of, catch up to it. sober-minded, to think clearly, to be focused, because we have not been purchased with silver, gold, perishable things. And to be holy and to be set apart is to be set aside for God's specific purposes. In order to do that, you have to do two things. First, you have to let go of the old life, as Paul talks about in Ephesians 2 and 4. And you have to not only let go of the old life, the old habits, the old way of doing things, the old attitudes, those things that conform quite well in the world but have no place in the kingdom of God. You have to let go of those, but then you also have to take up the life of God. And those new habits, and those new attitudes, and those living for one another, and looking out for the interests of one another. And that's what it means to be connected. It means to let go of one and take hold of the other. That's holiness. That's what it means to be holy. It means to be set apart, aside, out of the culture that we are in, that we can be in the world, but not of it. That we do things differently. That we live our lives differently. And the best and most God-ordained way to be connected is to the people sitting next to you. Nobody's looking. Are y'all afraid of each other? You know, I'm not looking at them. Those people. Ooh. And let me just go ahead and tell you right up front, when you deal with people, it gets messy. It does. Yesterday I was gluing some rocks on the top of our fire pit, and my wife had told me, hey, I asked you to do this 6 months ago. Could you do that? I only reminded you once every 6 months. You know that great t-shirt. If a man says he'll do something, he doesn't need to be reminded every 6 months. So she said, could you go do that today? And I said, sure. So I went out and I got the adhesive, the caulk, and I was doing that, going around, and I got all of those done, and I was walking back to the garage and put all the stuff down, do all this, and reach back like this, and the adhesive was on my behind. I'm not really sure how it got there. I'm not really sure. Somehow along the way when I was carrying it, it must have brushed up against it, and so it's on my golf shorts. It's all over that, and you know how it goes from there with caulk. It gets everywhere. I don't know how it does. It's like it has a evangelism plan where it just migrates to every part. And so I had it on my hands like, oh man. And so I do this and I'm like trying to get it was on the caulk bottom. So now it's on this hand. I'm like, oh, rub that off. Like, oh, it's hot. Oh no. And so I got it on my hand and it's all down the back here, and I mean just everywhere that you can possibly imagine that this caulk is. Just amazing. It's like in Ghostbusters when Bill Murray gets the slime on him and he's trying to do it. He's on the catalogs, cards, and he flips it like this and it gets in his eye. I mean, it was all over me. And I had to get that thing off. That's like dealing with people. And don't laugh because we're talking about you. You're that way too. Spouses are elbowing each other right now. People are messy. God gets right down in the middle of it and calls us to get right down in the middle of it. Because when we do that, we grow. Nobody grows when everything's going great. It's wonderful. The mountaintop experience is great, but nothing grows up there. All the growth is in the valley. All the growth comes with letting God teach you. And God seems to teach us by sending us difficult people. And we don't learn the lesson because we keep sending them away. I'm not dealing with that. But that's how we grow, as we connect to one another. As we realize that we're part of something greater, that we have a shared connection throughout the United Methodist Church. I love that about us, that there is a connection throughout the world about who we are. With that in mind, I want to tell you about an opportunity. An opportunity to connect with another United Methodist Church. They're not in our backyard. They're far, far away. But they need our help. This year earlier, I took a trip to Israel and took a bunch of United Methodists. There were 2 United Methodist bishops on that trip, and one of them, at some point during the trip, pulled me aside and said, Adam, I need you to help me. And you know, when a bishop says that, you say, okay. And so he said, I need some help. He said, there is a church in a district in one of my annual conferences that I'm over, that the rainy season last year caused one of their walls to collapse and fall down. Can you show the first picture? That's the wall. So you can see the other wall, and that entire side just collapsed because of the rain. Part of it has to do with the ground is not completely steady, or it's shifted because of the rain, and so it caused this entire wall to fall down. And so he said to me, he said, can you help us? And I said, Bishop, we'll try and do whatever we can. Can you tell me a little bit more? Can you tell me about this church? And he said, well, it's a growing church. It's called Kim United Methodist Church. It's in the city of Kalimi in the Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa. So if you go there and you Google Kalimi, it'll take you to the southeast corner, and there's a city right by kind of this very large lake. And so that's a church on the side. You can see the pastor and all his folks there. And let me just tell you what's going on right now in Africa. Africa is exploding with growth because of the gospel. It is the fastest growing central conference in the entire United Methodist Church. The way we do things here is when we're going to start a new church, we say, we're thinking about going here, let's make a plan, and we go up 6 months to a year, and the cabinet works with the pastor that they're going to send there, and he or she begins to form a plan, they begin to do this work, and everything happens, and then they launch, and it goes. They don't do that over there. They find a group of people, they share the gospel with them, lay people share the gospel, all of these people come to faith, and they call the bishop and say, we just started a church, can you send us a pastor? And that happens all over. This particular bishop is over 3 annual conferences, has over 1,000 churches, and 56 district superintendents. With everything involved, transportation, materials, labor, it's going to cost about $12,000. And I said, Bishop, I will take this back to our congregation. I'm reasonably sure that we can help you with this. So I went to Chuck Lamont and began to pray about it. I went to Chuck Lamont and I said, Chuck, here's where we're at. He's our mission steward. What do you think? And Chuck said, I was thinking about this, praying about it, and I don't think we should stop there. And I thought, 20,000? What does that mean? And he said, no, I feel like we need to partner with that congregation. Like we need to help them like an elder brother or sister. We need to just connect with them, that this could be a possibility for ongoing mission with this congregation to facilitate them. Because the pastors ride bicycles everywhere. And we're not talking like down the street. The average wage for a pastor in Africa is $30 a month. A month. So I said, maybe so, Chuck. And so he and I prayed, and we feel like that perhaps God is calling us at DSUMC to connect with them and to help them as they spread the gospel in a very difficult place. It's in the region of Tanganyika, if I'm saying that right, which have just previously stopped a 50-year civil war. Just all of this stuff. And so they're rebuilding. The church is uniquely positioned to offer the gospel and help. And so that's what I'm asking us to do. I'm asking us to partner with them. First financially, maybe as a down payment. And then just praying and seeing and discovering what God can do, how we can help their needs for that. So if you're going to give, if the Lord lays it on your heart to give, then what I would ask you to do is make out a check to the church and put Africa Mission in the memo. You can also give online at our website. At the top, it has online giving. You can click that. It'll take you to a page that has multiple areas to give, and at the top will be Africa Mission. And you can fill that out and send it via online giving. So I just ask us to prayerfully consider. We feel like that the Lord may be calling us to partner with them long term, maybe do mission work there, send teams there, that kind of a thing. And so we're discerning that, but we feel like that we could help. And I know that this congregation is very generous, very generous. You always have been. You're incredibly kind in that. And so I would ask us to consider that and to prayerfully consider whether or not we can help and what we can do in that. So those are a couple ways to give. If you have a question about that or anything, you're welcome to talk to me or call the church office. We'll obviously help in any way we can. But let's try and meet this need. I think we can. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you so much in Christ that you have called us because you love us. You called us because you loved us. And we have responded, Lord, because we love you. Though maybe some of us initially responded out of fear, it is not fear that has kept us in relationship to you. It is your great love, your loving kindness, your mercy. Lord, I pray for us that we would not be content. Lord, I just pray that there would be just a sense of uneasiness, a lack of content with simply being here and observing. But that we would engage with our brothers and sisters, that we would engage with this local church, Lord, and beyond it, that we would connect into the life and ministry that is found here at DSUMC in relation to you, that they would respond and connect into life, to grow in their faith, that we would all go down this road of faith together, knowing that we have not been purchased, Lord, with perishable